We are learning more this morning about plans for the coronation of King Charles, including just how slimmed down it'll be. Associate editor at The Telegraph, Camilla Tominey, joins us live from London. Thanks for your time, Camilla. Reports the ceremony will be half as big as the Queen's.
That's right, Brooke. I mean, there's this sense that it has to be quite value for money. I think in a cost of living crisis, by the time this ceremony comes around in May, people have skyrocketing energy bills, paying more for fuel. And therefore, they've decided that as opposed to 1953, when, would you believe it, 8,000 people came, that the guest list is going to be slimmed down to about 2,000 to 3,000. The capacity of Westminster Abbey is around the 2,500 mark. So they'll have to put some more chairs in. It's difficult because, of course, all of the politicians in the UK want to come, and there are 650 of them alone, let alone all of the VIP guests from across the world that want to attend this momentous occasion.
It's not going to be just less extravagant, it's going to be shorter too, Camilla.
Well, that's probably necessary. I was reading earlier that when the Queen did her carriage procession, it was 5 miles long and it took 45 minutes to pass each stationary point. So I think there's a sense that they need to scale it down, not just in cost, but also in longevity. Yes, there are bank holidays to compensate, and people will come in their droves, of course, to London for a coveted glimpse of such a special spectacle. But I think the idea of it being lasting all day rather than being a bit more expedient is what they're aiming for now.
So the King certainly doing his best to minimise the economic footprint of the royal family. He's diverted a huge sum of money from the Crown estate to the public.
He has, and I think because of the scrutiny of the royal finances in general at a time when everyone's feeling the squeeze, there's this sense that if they're deriving money, in this case from wind farms, offshore wind farms make the Crown estate a huge amount of money, and then the royals themselves take a proportion of that from the government in order to pay for their own endeavours, official and otherwise. And therefore, I think the King's decided that he needs to give back to the people at a time when, of course, people's purse strings are tight. So it's a shrewd decision, which doesn't give him any, does him well in a PR sense, especially after everything that's happened with Spare, the criticism of him and the Prince of Wales. They've both taken a bit of a battering in the approval ratings. Not as bad as Harry and Meghan, but I think this is some way of trying to win the public back over.
Well, speaking of the big question, do you reckon Harry and Meghan will be going?
Well, Brooke, I know they're going to be invited because the royals are trying to do this thing of seeming very reasonable. And in response to that, Harry perhaps seems unreasonable in continuing to criticise them. Whether they'll actually come or not remains to be seen. I mean, I think there's a strong chance that they might be booed. God forbid they might be egged, as has happened to the King on a couple of occasions since he took the throne. Let's wait and see. But there will certainly be fireworks. It would be good for journalists like me to be assessing the body language.
Oh, there'll be so much for us to unpack. Thanks, Camilla.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, thank you, Tim. Well, King Charles III has made good on his promise to deliver a slimmed-down coronation. This morning, we're learning just how slimmed down it is.
Former Palace Press Secretary and our favourite, Dickie Arbiter, is in London with more, and I think he was watching that tennis ball bobbing. Dickie, how did you see it?
I saw it. You've got to have a pretty big mouth to get those tennis balls in.
Well, it's not wrong.
It's true. It's true.
Oh, Dickie, you always deliver.
Never a dull. Dickie, he's inviting half as many
King Charles,
people,
that is.
yes, as the Queen did. Are you surprised how much smaller this coronation will be?
Well, this story actually comes, it's a bit of a speculative piece in one of the tabloids, but it makes sense. The coronation, when the Queen's in 1953, there were 8,000 in Westminster Abbey. They built scaffolding seats and they crammed people in. This coronation in May is going to be nothing like it. Abbey holds about 2,200. They can put another 800 on the medieval gallery, which is about 52 feet up in the air. You don't see a good view, but at least it gets a few more people. But it is going to be slimmed down. They're not going to be as many as there were last time. The procession afterwards is probably not going to be as big. Another thing with the procession, there was something like 32,000 in the parade itself and another 28,000 lining the route. There's not going to be that. Commonwealth soldiers came over, hundreds of them, and that's just not going to happen. There's going to be a procession. As we saw with the Queen's funeral, the procession was small by comparison to King George VI in 1952. So, yeah, it is going to be slimmed down in cost too. The coronation in 1953 cost £53 million in today's money. Coronation this time will certainly not be as much as that.
And Dickie, 1953 was such a long time ago. We know that King Charles is nowhere near as popular as the Queen was. What do you think the reaction will be globally to his coronation?
Well, I think that globally the reaction will be good. The King is popular. Wherever he's been in the United Kingdom, crowds have turned out. He's exchanged views with them. He has smiled. He has laughed. They've just loved his presence, both in Scotland, in England, in Wales, wherever he's gone, Northern Ireland as well. And people are pleased for him. Look, he's not been around in terms of head of state as long as the Queen, nor will he be. But he's been waiting in the wings for 70 years, and it's now come to him. So he will be popular. There'll be a big turnout. If you remember, Karl, at the time of the funeral, the crowds there were ecstatic, if you can put it that way. Even though it was a sad occasion, he did walkabouts. People shook hands with him. One woman even pulled him over to give him a kiss, and his security officers didn't stop her. So that gives a good indication of how people will accept him.
Look, it is going to be nonetheless, I mean, you're talking about, 70 years since the last one, a spectacle, a monumental spectacle, a great spectacle. What about in terms of the family situation, Dickie? Do we think, given what's happened with Harry's book, I know you're already taking a deep breath, but will Harry even be invited? Will King Charles go above all of the noise?
Well, Harry is his son, and he'd like to see a united family, and he will invite his son, I'm sure of that. Whether his son comes is a different matter altogether. He came to his great-grandmother's funeral, but he was visible by his absence because we saw him walk behind the coffin to Westminster Abbey, again from Westminster Abbey, and that's all we saw of him. So I think he might well come, but it's a sort of, what sort of reaction will he get from the Brits over here? That remains to be seen. Look, it's a long time between now and the 6th of May. Anything can happen.
That's true. We do know that. Dickie, lovely to see you, and thank you for being so patient with the classic bit of Australiana, the tennis ball bobbing competition.
I hope you're coming to the coronation.
I hope so too,
yeah,
my friend.
We do too.
Look, we've got choppers overhead. It's all happening here in Melbourne. This is a great tournament. Gee, it came alive last night, didn't it? It's an absolutely spectacular day.
So much emotion.
That's the best.
Yeah, it's true. Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my God, Karl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports, and amazing Aussie stories.
And Karl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
that never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?
Always.